the snake, poke the snake, get the snake to move. You know, he's just lying there. So you felt, let's get our priorities straight, because I'm concerned about how did I come off in the scene. They were looking at everything but me.
I have to say, you wouldn't want to fall in that pool. By the time you finish shooting, it's full of all sorts of wildlife and bugs. It was absolutely foul after all those weeks of being in there, sort of stagnant water.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
As elaborately detailed as the sets were at Elstree Studios, equally impressive was the work done in California. ILM was able to produce special effects that were light years ahead of those seen in the first Star Wars.
If you look at Star Wars, you're either kind of in space, and they're all, and maybe the Death Star's back there, maybe it isn't, and you have a number of shots on different planets. If you look at Empire, and it's broad, you've got a speeder sequence and 2 or 3 big dogfights. You've got the whole Cloud City and all the interiors of different landscapes that are way beyond what we've done before. So I think it was the breadth of the work that I think differentiates that from the first show. And each one of those sequences required different problem-solving skills.
We did this incredible chase through the asteroid field. Designing asteroids is not as easy as you think, and I remember many of us in the model shop tried to come up with something that would look good, and I think for some of the very far ones we had used potatoes.
The biggest problem I had is it just wasn't going fast enough, and I was running out of money. Irving Kershner was an extremely good director, but the film went over budget, went over schedule, and all the money I had in Star Wars was committed to this film, plus more.
We shot several scenes in Empire over again. There's a scene in Cloud City where Han Solo character is kind of pacing up and down, and Princess Leia comes in, and he reacts to the way she looks, because she's dressed differently than she has in the entire rest of the film.
You look beautiful. You should wear girls' clothes all the time.
We looked at the dailies and we weren't happy with anything, really. The attitude of the actors was too obvious.
Sit down. Come on, talk to me.
And we could have let that go, but it just didn't feel right.
6 retake. Action.
I hope Luke made it to the fleet all right.
I'm sure he's fine. He's probably sitting around wondering what we're up to right now.
You know, your friend Lando's very charming, but I don't trust him.
Trust him? He's an old friend of mine.
And slate.
So we shot it in a slightly more subtle fashion, which is the way it's in the film now.
I don't trust Lando.
Well, I don't trust him either. He is my friend. Besides, he'll soon be gone.
And then you're as good as gone, aren't you?
Although most production challenges had been anticipated and expectations were understandably high, when Empire went over budget by $10 million, Lucasfilm suddenly found itself in a fiscal crisis.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
3 of the top executives of Bank America Entertainment walked into my office saying, we have to pull you a loan. And I said, how can the largest bank in the entertainment business, with the sequel to the most successful movie ever out, be wanting to pull my loan? And he said, well, we have a new credit manager, and he just has a rule. Budget doubles, he pulls the loan. One of the bankers quit over it. They knew it was a big mistake, but, you know, I was stuck with trying to make $1 million payroll that Friday.
Release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me.
That was the big difference between the studio system and the independent view of filmmaking. The studio have a large resource to draw on for what they do, and independents don't. So it's a much tighter situation.
I was just hoping the bank to allow me to finish without going back to 20th Century Fox and giving away all my rights. Because that's ultimately what my other choice was to just simply let them own it and lose my independence. But I wanted my independence so badly. We managed to do it in a way that I paid them just a little bit more money, but they didn't get any of the licensing, and they didn't get any of the sequels, and that's what I was trying to hold on to. If I had to pay a few extra points in order to get them to guarantee a loan with the bank, I could do that. And I think Fox was just as concerned that the movie get finished as we were.
While Empire's budget may have been tight, security during the production was even tighter. Only Lucas, Kirshner, and the film's producers knew the real story.
At the time, I knew that Mark had a father and that it was Darth Vader. But this was not in the script. There was a false page inserted. And I had the knowledge. The actors didn't even have it. No one had it. It was a total secret.
Script was under lock and key. The models were under lock and key. ILM was under lock and key and shrouded from the rest of the world. The storyline of the movie was under lock and key.
You are beaten. It is useless to resist.
The film's shocking climax, in which Darth Vader reveals Luke Skywalker's true parentage, was kept a secret from nearly everyone, even David Prowse and Mark Hamill. Hamill was told privately, just moments before the cameras rolled.
I met with Mark and said, you know that Darth Vader's your father. What?
They had taken me aside and said, this is what he's really going to say.
And we're going to do the scene. And Darth Vader will be saying stuff that doesn't count. Forget it. Use your own rhythm compared to what he's doing.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you.
We did a few takes, and he finally got into it.
Join me, and I will complete your training.
And here's Darth Vader, who had his dialogue, by the way, and he's speaking the dialogue. He thinks it's being recorded, you see. It's not being recorded. What's being recorded is this.
He said, you don't know the truth. Obi-Wan killed your father.
And then, of course, we re-recorded everything.
I'll never join you! If you only knew the power of the dark side.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, Luke, I am your father, I said to myself, he's lying. I wonder how they're going to play that lie out.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
And I screamed, no, just as it was meant to be.
No!
Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
I think that it went beyond Star Wars. You got to know the characters a little better. You had some humor.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
I thought of the film as a second movement of a symphony. That's why I wanted some of the things slower. And it ends in a way that you can't wait to see, to hear the vivace, the next movie, the allegretto. I didn't have a climax at the end. I had an emotional climax.
As Empire's premiere date approached, the producers once again held their collective breath. Strikes Back finally opened on May 21st, 1980, it didn't meet expectations, it surpassed them. Within 3 months, George Lucas had recovered his $33 million investment.
There was something about Empire that just immediately just clicked when I saw it. I didn't know how all the romance was going to work and the adventure, and was it too serious and all this sort of stuff. But it really came together.
Until its premiere, cases of lightning striking twice were rare in Hollywood. Sequels were almost always a letdown. But in the Star Wars universe, different laws applied, and George Lucas, the world's most successful independent filmmaker, was fast becoming a law unto himself. In a radical move by Hollywood standards, he shared Empire's profits with every one of his employees, handing out over $5 million in bonuses in 1980. The profits from the 2 Star Wars films also helped fuel Lucas's rapidly expanding business enterprises.
We did have some money, but it was still a startup company. We could have messed it up as much as we did it right. But his ability to make successful movies is what drove the financial success of the company. But how we used those funds to grow the company and why he has a net worth the way he does, he was smart enough to understand all the rights, all the ancillaries.
By financing The Empire Strikes Back with his own money, George Lucas had bet the farm and won. In fact, he was in a position to build his own kind of farm, Skywalker Ranch in Marin County, California. Lucas had long imagined a visually inspiring setting, where his employees could work in a creative atmosphere, and where friends like Steven Spielberg, Robert Redford, and Francis Ford Coppola could enjoy working at a state-of-the-art facility.
George was debating on 2 different parcels of land. One was on Lucas Valley Road. I said, well, that's the one you have to pick.
The company structure supported multi-movies in all areas, merchandising, special effects, ancillaries.
And so all the little companies had to be started and operated and have all these systems put in place.
LucasArts, THX, Skywalker Sound, Industrial Light and Magic. Each subsidiary of Lucasfilm would serve George Lucas's creative vision. In turn, they revolutionized a film industry that had for too long been plagued by complacency.
It was an idea of one person and successfully implemented. George is one of the more successful companies in the world, and you can't measure it just by size because he doesn't need the size of a Fox or a Warner's to accomplish the same thing he's accomplishing in putting out his films.
As the sole owner of the most successful franchise in movie history, Lucas had gained the financial means and the creative freedom to produce anything he wanted.
George's greatest strength as a filmmaker is that he's a great storyteller. George has a vision. There are filmmakers down through history like Capra and John Ford, and they made John Ford pictures and Frank Capra pictures, and Hitchcock made Hitchcock films, and George Lucas makes George Lucas pictures.
George Lucas had helped turn the tide of Hollywood's downbeat realism and brought back a sense of fantasy and wonder. Movies were fun again. But in the wake of Empire, the filmmaker found himself unexpectedly mired in Hollywood politics. To preserve the dramatic opening sequences of his films, Lucas wanted the screen credits to come at the end of the movies. It was a highly unusual choice. And for the first Star Wars, the Writers Guild and Directors Guild had allowed it. But when Lucas did the same for the sequel, they fined him over $250,000 and even attempted to pull Empire from theaters. Next, the DGA went after Irvin Kershner. To protect his director, Lucas paid all the fines to the guilds, but the situation left him feeling frustrated and persecuted.
Lucas was so upset that he dropped out of the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, and the Motion Picture Association.
Another unfortunate casualty in the wake of Empire was Alan Ladd Jr., Lucas's most vocal supporter at 20th Century Fox.
The criticism over the deal is what ended my tenure at Fox, really, because people were very angry and irritated.